Bernadette Davis.
Here.
Mary Hess.
Here.
Calmatia.
Here.
Victoria Newport.
Here.
Tracy Williams.
Here. And I've asked Mr. Schmelzer to help lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, high school student at DeKalb High School. Ben?
Hello. Never mind.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ben. First and foremost, I think most of you are here, but I want to thank the DeKalb High School string band. Allison stepped out already. I think they're the best kept secret at DeKalb High School. A lot of people don't even know they exist, and they are so much fun and do such a great job. And this is the second year now we've had them here at the meeting before Christmas, and it just makes it all a little more easy, I guess, to be here and get started that way. So thank you, Allison. And I know they were grabbing cookies. I hope their supper's as good as ours. So thank you. A public hearing on the fiscal year 2014-2015 tax levy. I would like to open the hearing to any questions from the public. No one? Okay, then we're going to close the hearing. Acceptance of gifts and donations. It's been recommended that the Board of Education accept with gratitude a $5,500 donation from the Huskies for Hope golf outing for special education programs at DeKalb High School.
So moved.
Thank you. I don't see any yet. The gentleman from Fatty's and Coach Carey, no? Well, obviously we thank them. Roll call, please, Vicki.
Cohen Marks.
Yes.
Nina Montana.
Yes.
Vicki Bernadette Davis.
Yes.
Mary Hess.
Yes.
Calmatia.
Yes.
Victoria Newport. Tracy Williams.
Yes.
Tracy, I would just say Danielle came 1 yard to hit me on number 17.
Oh.
Just an off.
Yeah. Just didn't quite hit what you were aiming at, did you? Well, that's a fabulous program they've started several years in a row now. They've brought significant donations to us, and thank you to all of them. I know Coach Carey's probably reviewing film still this year, which is good for them. And I have to say, just as a follow-up, it was just last meeting we accepted a donation from the DeKalb Education Foundation and the Music Boosters to pay for a new harp. Turns out last week, I attended a high school orchestra concert where they used that. And I'm telling you, it was spectacular. And I'm not a music connoisseur or anything else, but in that new auditorium with the DeKalb High School Orchestra, and they all, if you haven't been there, I recommend you take one in. They dress up in music boosters have bought them tuxedo jackets over the years. I mean, it was as good entertainment as you will find anywhere. And all I had to do was walk in the door. It was fabulous. And that new harp, they started right in with that in that beautiful auditorium. So keep your eyes and ears open. If you see that there's going to be a concert, I really recommend you try it. You don't have to be a music geek to enjoy it. I certainly did. Okay, public comment. Any cards, Vicki? None. Board committee reports and correspondence. Is Christmas getting closer or something? Or?
The DeKalb band, high school band, had a concert as well last week, and were amazing as well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. In fact, what's going on tonight, Tamara? There's another concert out
We
there.
have a lot going on tonight. We have the winter sports, we have the lunch, dinner, and then we have a concert, and we have entertainment else. And
I know every night you drive by, that parking lot's full this time of night. And, but you've seen it. It's all quality stuff. My hat's off to you. Anything else? Okay, the Gender Equity and Empowerment Title IX Club. Tamara, this is an information item.
well, I'm actually going to have Ben and Sam introduce this to you. They're looking to pilot a club, and it's their idea, so I'll let them tell you a little bit about it. Okay.
Well, gender equity is one of the first things people look for, and they don't even realize that it's part of everyday life for both boys and girls. There's a lot of stereotypes throughout schools, and this could help people realize that they're not always fair, and we like to stop them.
We also feel that this would be an excellent opportunity to develop another connection between DeKalb High School and Northern Illinois University with their Department of Women's Studies.
Title IX is a law for sports, but it also touches on gender equity in general, so that's why we chose the name, Gender Equity and Empowerment Club. Title IX.
Okay. Questions? All right, thanks, guys. Thanks very much. Okay, next, the ISAT, PSAE, ACT, and AMS web data with Kelly Summers information.
Hi, all. Give me just a second to get my presentation warmed up. I thought you all thought you were done with me forever. Yeah. know that we probably weren't, well, I don't want to say we probably weren't, we definitely weren't giving it as much weight as we probably have in the past because we knew that Park was coming online. Would that be a fair assessment?
I would say so, and you know, previously there would be a week prior to the exam when teachers would sort of focus on just studying for the exam, and we made it very clear, you know, we were already starting to retool for Park, so don't spend that time just on the prepping for the test.
These are our local assessment scores. AIMSweb is given 3 times a year. It measures basic skills in reading and also in math. And similar to the ACT slide, I wanted to do a comparison of DeKalb School District, and then there's also an available comparison with a national normative sample. And what I think is really cool about this particular chart is that in many areas, we are either right on par with a very large national sample, tens of thousands of students, or in some cases, we're a little bit better, which I think really speaks to the great work that our teachers are doing with respect to reading and also math skills. What's also very interesting about this chart is you can see all the way on the left is kindergarten, and then it goes up to 8th grade. Many of our students come to us with some basic skills deficits, which we well know. But by about 3rd or 4th grade, our teachers are working really hard and they're catching those students up to be on par with other students in the district and also on par with a national normative sample, which I think is very, very important to acknowledge for the sake of our teachers and our great administrators here. So this is reading. This is our basic reading snapshot. And Tammy, if you move forward, this is our basic math snapshot. So these are our very basic numeracy skills that we assess for our students, not only in grade K, but all the way up through 8th grade. And obviously those assessments look very, very different for a kindergartner versus an 8th grader. For a kindergartner, it might be something as simple as oral counting, whereas an 8th grader, they're starting to get into more algebra-based kind of problems that they're asked to solve. So again, we have our students start with a little bit of a deficit, but then as they move through the ranks of DeKalb, they're catching up very quickly to a national normative sample, which is definitely something the district should be proud of. This is a little bit of a different way to cut the last slide. Now, this is the percent of our students that are in the established category in AIMSweb, and this is the data that our teachers are used to seeing as part of their data teaming process. Now, although these look low, I want to point out that what the bar would be 50%. That would be the average range. So we want to see numbers of at least 50% here. So at the early grades, we're looking at numbers of 36%, 30%. But by the time we're getting into some of the later grades, we're seeing averages, percentages of students in the established category that are actually a little bit higher than that 50th percentile. So again, although this is not the be-all, end-all of assessment data, it is something that we've done here locally for many, many years. And it's showing that we're really doing some good work with respect to both reading and math for our students. Any questions?
For this testing,
I'm sorry?
the AIMSweb,
I'm not sure. Doug, are you aware of that, or Jenny maybe?
Frames Web.
Will we continue with AIMSweb?
Well,
Is that under discussion?
It is.
Okay,
Yes.
That's under discussion.
Just one, I'm not even sure if it's a real question, but looking at the drop off in 8th grade math, and we have a pattern there. One, I'm glad we stuck to our guns and doubled the math minutes in 8th grade.
Absolutely.
2, do you see this catching up, Jenny, or, because of that or for other reasons?
I say for a lot of different reasons. I see with the double blocking math, but with the tremendous amount of PD that has been provided this year. Sean LaPlante does some fabulous things in his math class. I was in there today, and with the use of the Chromebooks. I mean, there's just a whole lot of different pieces to the puzzle, but yes.
Is this the first year for the double block?
Yes.
Okay, then I want to point out that these are fall scores, so perhaps when either Laura or I come back and present the winter scores, I would hope to see that we would be at least at the national average, if not better. These are students that did not have that double block in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, so I would certainly hope we would see some pretty drastic improvement in that area in math.
Yeah, because it was a couple items in a row here. It was just very obvious. 7th grade, they're doing fine. All of a sudden, 8th grade, something changes. Okay, anyone else? Mary?
Just about the ACT, what the state paying for the last year. Are colleges still gonna require that?
Yeah, what we would, if the state is not going to continue to do this, we'll go back to the old model where students will be able to take it on a Saturday. We'll still offer it. We'll be a testing center for ACT because obviously our students need it for college admission. So, but again, would have to be a paid test if the state no longer funds it. And we were given the option to either administer it or not administer it. And if we decide to administer it, we have to test all juniors. So we
At least
decided.
for this year.
Yes, correct.
Well, I have to commend you to catch up with the state average in ACT, given our student body. And given, when you look at the progression of these kids in kindergarten that are, you know, significantly below averages, and then you get to a point where the ACT is at the average, there's a lot of people to be commended for that. I mean, this speaks for itself, right? And for years, you know, we heard all the criticism about our students and how they stack up on the ACT. Clearly, you'd like to do better than the average, but you know what? A little bit at a time, and so I guess well done to everyone for, you know, now we're seeing it, right? Any other questions?
Yeah, is there a reason why we wouldn't look like the Ames Web test scores over time?
We certainly could. I absolutely could bring that back to you all, but because we test 3 times a year in so many grades and in so many areas, I wanted to make it as broad of an overview as possible, so as to not present you with 25 different slides and bore you to death with data, although I would love that. I don't think any of you would. But certainly we do have the ability to compare over time. In fact, I think that the leadership team has actually been looking at some of that data to try to look at trends and see if we're headed in the right direction longitudinally. But I felt that it was more important to present the district snapshot, but we absolutely could look at it by grade over time.
So taking your comment about next time we do this, because of the double block in math, we should in spring see a jump. I now have to remember that board game, but seeing that trend over time, I would expect that we would see a large increase that could trigger the conversation on why that happened. We have a discussion on the double block again.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
for me, the history kind of, it just helps. You started off with the other slides all show how we do it over time.
Yeah.
Well, last year, that's the way because it's fall, winter, spring, right? So it was cumulative for the year, but they didn't go back prior.
Yeah, we need to see 2011.
Yeah, this is also hard because we only have our fall data for Ames Web right now, so that's really the only snapshot in time we can present unless we're looking longitudinally. But certainly that's something that Laura can do, or if it's still me, that I would be happy to provide you with.
Anyone else? Well, thanks, Kelly, and again, great work to everyone. That's no small thing to get our ACT scores up that way. It's a very big thing, so congratulations.
Great data.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You can come back again, Kelly. you
I
know?
will. Thank you.
But I do appreciate the fact that you shortened up the presentation.
I knew you all would.
Next, the Read 180 curriculum update, Dr. Daniel Welch and Dr. Vicki Tuskin.
Sorry, we just need to get started.
Hello, thanks for hearing us tonight.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to say before I started, this is truly a partnership between student services and the curriculum department. And that's something I really admire about DeKalb School District. We really look at how we can partner to better support students prior to needing special ed services. So I think this is a keen example of that.
And let me introduce myself because I do believe this is the first time that I've stood before you. And I also want to take this moment also to thank all of you for inviting me to DeKalb. It's been quite a ride, it's 6.5 months. But I'm thrilled to be here, to be able to work with people like Jenny and Danielle and the whole CNI team. So again, thank you very, very much. DeKalb is a very special place. We come before you today because early on, actually this summer, Danielle and I, working with our literacy specialists, really recognized that at the middle school level, in terms of reading interventions, that there was some work that needed to be done. To explain our proposal, we really need to explain to you what exists at the middle school at present. When we talk about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, we're talking about RTI interventions. Tier 1 would be the ones that would go on in the classroom. And then as you move into tier 2 and tier 3, that's where the more intensive interventions are taking place for struggling students. So at this point right now, at the middle school level, at both middle schools, we have 2 literacy specialists who are at Rosette in the morning, Hunley in the afternoon. And for students who are struggling in reading, but are not too far below grade level, they attend a literacy class. It is not a research-based intervention. It's really reflects really more like a resource study hall. And the literacy specialists pull together strategies, work cooperatively with the academic teams in trying to provide that reading support. A more intensive tier 2 that's also taking place for students who are now more than 1 grade level below in reading. We receive a reading intervention called Read 180. Read 180 is a program that addresses reading struggles from both a computer-based, a reading-based, and a writing-based. And the students literally move through stations over the course of the class period, getting small group instruction, independent, as well as silent reading. Then the tier 3 that the students receive, if they're more than a couple grade levels below, receive corrective reading, which I know is a program that many people in the district are very familiar with. So that's the existing program right now. However, there are some major issues with the intervention program at the middle school. To begin with, the students are not making significant gains. Within the system that exists, they're entering high school with abilities that are quite discrepant from their peers. They're just not, we're not closing the gap. You know, the whole point of RTI and grading the interventions was to help students close that achievement gap. The system that exists at the middle school is not doing that. And that's a problem. Also, when we look at the scores, you know, there's that positive side that Kelly shared about the Ames Web. What you weren't able to see is the different levels. You know, you have the green, the yellow, and the red. What we're finding over time is that those yellows and reds, they're remaining flat. We're not helping those kids catch up and become independent readers. Another thing, we really don't have enough data points to correctly identify these students to put them in the correct interventions. Right now, basically we have Ames Web, and though Ames Web is a benchmarking tool, it really doesn't indicate really where a struggling student is at other than in terms of if they're in the red or in the yellow. It doesn't give us a Lexile score. It doesn't aggregate in terms of where their reading comprehension is, decoding skills. It gives us a benchmark. It's a fluency mark. Another issue with what's going on at the middle school, there really are no clear criterion for how students are identified and moved into these 3 sections. There's no clear, what we call grade level bands. And when we talk about grade level bands, we're looking at Lexile scores, and then you break that out in terms of, okay, the student who's in 7th grade should be within this band if they're reading on grade level. If they're a grade level below, then they're in this band. We don't utilize a system like that at all at the middle school. And then the final thing is that the interventions themselves really don't build on each other. There's really no systematic way of identifying, okay, if a student is in that tier 3 corrective reading, how do you know when you can move them then into Read 180, which is a totally different program. They don't sync together. And then how do you know you move a Read 180 student into literacy class, which isn't even research-based at all? And I do want to say, before Danielle goes into more detail, I want to say it really loud and clear. This situation is not the result of not being on top of the situation or people not doing their job. I have to honestly tell you, the middle school staff, and I've had the privilege of working with them a lot this year, those literacy specialists, the administrators, they're making a system that quite frankly is not very well put together. They're making it work. Kudos to them. And kids are making some progress. But the way the system is set up and the way kids are identified, we're not making the kinds of gains. And I know I don't have to tell all of you how critical it is. Middle school's our last shot. If those kids are not fluent, positive, confident readers as they enter high school, you know, and I know, the chances of them being successful in high school and graduating drops off.
The only reason I put this slide in here was just to say, again, while the ISAT is going away, the reality is the park is going to be more rigorous. We all know that. So again, if I'm a betting person, if on the test that wasn't as rigorous, the high stakes test, we weren't doing as well. Can you imagine how students that are in need of intervention will do on the park? Probably worse. So what we need to do is we need to address it as soon as possible. So again, that's why I don't want to beat a dead horse, but that's why I put this on here. This is what we know. Response to struggling students needs to be strategic, research-based, and data-driven. My code name for this is a lean, mean fighting machine. You want kids to go in there, get what they need, and then be able to access the general education. You don't want students to stay in their intervention for years and years and years, and then end up going to special education because they've been in intervention for 5 years and it didn't work. So that is why we put this together. Just, if we want it to work, we want it to be effective prior to entering high school. So example, can you imagine being a high school, maybe freshman history teacher and having a student, a general ed student reading at the 3rd grade level in your class? Trying to access the text regardless of differentiation, which our teachers can do, we're still not closing that reading achievement gap. We did bring this proposal to the Curriculum Council, which it would be a core ELA replacement at our middle school level in December, and it was approved. The teachers, some teachers were so appreciative because they see that in their middle school classes as well.
So this is our proposal that honestly has been a collaborative effort, not just Danielle and I, the middle school principals, the literacy specialists. We've actually been working on this since early fall. We've made site visits to other districts that are utilizing this system and picking their brain in terms of how they've made it work for their struggling students. So this is what we're proposing. At tier 1, which is your classroom intervention, so that would continue for students at or above grade level, and ongoing PD development in terms of reading strategies and support would continue to go on in the classroom. That's your tier 1. For tier 2, in place of that literacy class, which remember I said is more like a resource study hall and really does not have any research-based strategies inherent in it, we were proposing to create that as like a booster. We call it the class for the kids who are either on the bubble, you know, they don't qualify for special ed, they really haven't qualified for specific interventions in elementary school, but clearly they hit middle school, they hit that secondary level, and they're struggling. And Read 180 has an approach called Read 180 Stretch that provides, it's kind of a mini version of the Read 180. It puts some of those very same components in place, but really targets students to keep them in the classroom, but give them those supports that they really, really need. For tier 2, which now we're looking at kids who are 2 to as much as 4 years below grade level, and we have those at the middle school, that would be then Read 180, and that would be a core replacement. By the time kids in middle school are, if they're reading 2 to 4 years below grade level, they can't access the core. They can't access the core curriculum. So Read 180 is Common Core aligned. It's a reading and writing product that provides both. But those students, instead of going to double block English language arts, would go to a double block of Read 180. And then for our students who are really, really low and have really not, and really need the very basics in terms of phonic and word and text skills, that tier 3, instead of corrective reading, we would then put those students in Systems 44, which is part of the Read 180 package. So by doing it this way, what we've done is we're creating an intervention system that has grade band levels. It's a system that the parts make sense and fit together. It's research-based. It's had tremendous success in other districts, and would really enable us to really target those students before getting to high school, to really target the needs that they have for reading.
Currently, we're trying to get a handle of how this would affect staffing, how this would affect all those issues, and the way that we're proposing to do that would be the following. The student reading inventory is an assessment that takes about 45 minutes that students take on the computer, and it would give us their reading level, their Lexile level, so we would be able to determine how many students would qualify for these programs. We are going to give that to the 5th graders, the current 5th graders, who would be 6th graders, and then our 7th and our 6th and 7th graders that are already in intervention. So that way we could say how many students would need what intervention. From there, then we can anticipate with the existing staff we have where they would need to be. The B part of that is we already own Read 180 curriculum, but if we had to open more classrooms, we would better know that. So we wanted to do that early, so we are doing that in February. Additionally, we can use grant funding. The IDEA grant, I can allocate a certain percentage of that funding for early intervening services, so I would be doing that as well. That's what we had for you. Questions?
Yes, to reallocate existing staff, you're gonna have to add more staff because there's no way you're going to be able to separate a quote-unquote normal class of 35 students into 3 separate classes, you know, based on the students' needs with one teacher at one time. So are you considering that, planning on that?
Yes and no. To clarify that, one thing would be, since this is a core replacement, we would not have as many students going into that core class. So the first thing, to be fiscally responsible, we would do is really assess those numbers to see how many students were not going into those, and B, how that would affect staffing. And if any of those teachers would be reallocated to teach still in that English language arts department, for lack of a better word, team. The B part of that is, I mean, if you're asking me my personal and professional opinion, 2 reading specialists across 2 schools at the size that these schools are, I'm surprised it's worked for this long, but it hasn't worked, evident from. So, I mean, if you're asking me my prediction, I think yes, it may affect staffing, or it may be we can reallocate certain staff. That's why we kind of need to do those projections early to really see what that looks like. And I would hate to just say an arbitrary number. I really would rather do that student reading inventory to be able to come back and say, give you that kind of information in different plans. So what I mean by that, but different plans based on the amount of students that qualify, we have to decide if that's the bands we gave you for students qualifying, is that an appropriate band? You know what I'm saying? What if 100% of the students would qualify? they wouldn't all, but we would have to relook at that. We didn't make good intervention bands then.
Sure,
It shouldn't be
understand
that many.
I'm just thinking that in a average quote unquote language arts class, you are going to have so many students, you could almost break it down with, those who are at or above, those who are 1 to 2 years below, and those who are up to 4 years below. So that I'm just seeing numbers going every which way, and you need people for them.
Right, and also just to clarify, up until this point, we've relied very heavily on AimsWeb. And as I said earlier, AimsWeb really does not give us the picture that an SRI can give us. That's why at this point, we're just proposing to you the proposal, because we will have data on our 5th graders at a depth that we've not had before. And that's gonna be very powerful, good and bad. At both ends. I think we would all agree in this room that it's been hard to come up with sufficient data points to make a lot of different decisions for all of our students. So we're very excited about just this initial screening for 5th grade in February, and it's a projection because we will go back in May, because there's a lot of student growth that goes on between February and May, where we'll really then get our hard numbers. But just doing it in February, we're gonna have a better picture than what we would have gotten if we had just relied on the AimsWeb data. And I also just want to interject, because most of the elementary principals are here, and they need to be commended as well, because we went to them and said, in light of Park and 2 testing windows, we're also asking you, can you squeeze this in for your 5th graders? And so none of this would even be possible if the elementary principals had not really, they've been partnership with us as well. So definitely, once we get that set of data in February, and we're working closely with Tim and Tish about what scheduling would look like, then we'll have some hard numbers, some definite recommendations, and then we're gonna have to hash it out and see what this is gonna really, really look like.
Additionally, I would say another way to look at it too is those students that end up going to high school and either dropping out because they're 4 or 5 years below grade level, or are the behavior problems, we refer them to special ed currently in high school a lot of the time. And that isn't really, we do have a high number of referrals at the high school for special ed. And again, it's not the fault of teachers or the staff there. It's just the reality is the students are coming in not ready, and that to me is not fiscally responsible.
That'll be interesting to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Um, Things you just said and things that are in the student profile for tier 3. I don't understand how students are getting promoted if they're 4 grades below reading level.
So if I'm hearing you right, are you asking, Mary, why our intervention or our strategy is why not keep them in 6th grade until
Well,
they're
why
at
are they
6th
going
grade
to middle
level?
school if they're reading at a 3rd grade reading level? Why are they going to 9th grade if they're reading at a 3rd grade reading level? Because then all of the rest of the curriculum is just more challenging to them.
Well, we're trying to prevent that, with this plan, but B, I think that students, right now, the reality is we have students, A, that move in like that way, so, that's part of it. The B part of it too is that really isn't a good solution either. So what would happen if you had sixth graders that were 18 years old? Professionally, I've been in districts that do that. And the result of that is you have to build separate programs for those students. Because A, it's not appropriate for them to be in the 6th grade classroom. B, what they're needing are these interventions. So, you would be doing something like this anyway, but I would say that probably do it because it wouldn't be this is an intervention plan and fluid, that kind of thing, to me, I think would help students, encourage them to drop out more. If you continue to keep them in with peers that aren't,
Right, so socially and emotionally.
Right,
it's-
right.
I understand it's not the right thing, but
But I would
just
say your district, in my little time being here, Mary, positively hasn't, I've been in districts where they have 18-year-old 6th graders and they've had to start separate programs in separate buildings for those students because it really is not appropriate for them to be in the general ed sixth grade English class, let alone a lot of the time the behaviors are escalated, just because they're in there. You know, there's a multitude of reasons why that hasn't been an effective approach. And I would say the district that I'm referring to stopped doing that and really started to do a better intervention program. If you would talk to staff too, I think they would see it more appropriate to have an intervention system that they could use that is fluid like this, where students would hopefully graduate out of it, if you will, before entering high school. Because you're right, that is not fair to the student or the teacher coming in, trying to, as you said, trying to meet that huge discrepancy in their classroom, right?
Are kids held back anymore at all? Like in our district, I mean,
I can't speak to our district specifically, but to piggyback on what Danielle just said, there's a full body of longitudinal research that has just shown over the last 20, 25 years, retention doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And it doesn't work for a lot of different reasons, whether it's the social, emotional, but just rehashing the same material a second year over doesn't get them any more ready to move on to the next level, because it doesn't address the reasons why the student isn't successful in the grade they're in. And in my early career, when I taught, it was actually in the South, they use a retention system, and I saw that happen. The kids don't progress. They don't. It's not, in an adult mind, it would make sense. Well, they didn't get it, let's do it again. But in actuality, in many, many cases, the kids end up actually regressing. They don't progress.
And if, I'm sorry. I'm just going to say Colin and Mary, because it has been very, 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 very difficult to retain a student here in our district. And I'm speaking from the middle school. And even when there are good reasons why you would like to retain a student, there are so many factors involved that it usually doesn't have, doesn't have the effect, as Danielle and Vicki said. If you're going to retain a student, you have to have a whole plan for them the following year to help them gain what they need so they are not retained again. And that does not always happen for a variety of reasons. It's just a very difficult process and with very marginal benefits.
And if I could kind of give an analogy to that, you remember we used to just, before we had the Algebra AB, which was approved a year or two ago, and we've had tremendous success with that. Prior to that, it was they fail algebra, they take it again the next year. They fail again, take it again the next year. We're not doing anything differently, and that's analogous to retention at the elementary level or middle school level.
Is there more we can do for kids for interventions in elementary school, so by the time they're in the middle school, we don't have this gap? Or
I think that's an excellent question, and we are looking at that. I believe when you start intervention anywhere, there's a ripple effect up and a ripple effect down, a positive one. So yes, we do need to look at that. We started at the middle school because they were really in need of something. Currently, corrective reading is not really an age-appropriate intervention for those middle school students. At this time, we're seeing a lot of resistance to that. So we really need to look at the interventions we are using at the elementary school and if they are as robust as we need or systematic. But I mean, we shouldn't just keep throwing darts at a dartboard. We should find ones that, get the bullseye. And that's what I mean, and really embrace those and utilize those. But yes, I would hope that we would continue this development.
Anyone else?
Just want to commend you for bringing this forward, working with the staff and principals. I mean, it's a real positive step. We solve a problem.
Well, thanks very much. Next is the non-business consent agenda. It's been recommended that the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through E. Thank you. Any discussion? Vicki?
Tina Fontaine?
Yes.
Stephen in favor?
yes,
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Tom Attia?
Yes.
Victoria Newport?
yes,
Jerry Williams?
Yes.
Colin Vaughn?
yes.
Okay, the business consent agenda. It's been recommended that the Board of Education approve business consent agenda items A through C. Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion? Vicky?
Vicky, in favor?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yes.
Al Mattia?
Yes.
Victoria Newport? Yes. Lacey Williams?
Yes.
Colin Barnes?
Yes.
Amanda Montana?
Yes.
Okay, on to always the fun part of the meeting, business and finance. You didn't know, did you, Andrew? No. First, we have a request to bid asphalt and concrete repairs and seal coating. Tammy.
We're starting to plan for next summer's projects, and due to budget constraints, we're obviously looking very hard at what ones really have to be done and what ones can be delayed. This year, as in past years, we still need to do some seal coating and concrete and asphalt repairs in the district to stay ahead of those areas that are in such disrepair that they could be safety hazards or are costing us more on ongoing maintenance than if we were to just let them go. I did sit, and Andrew and I have discussed this at length in ways to reduce kind of the pattern we've been having in regards to seal coating, because we were, if you recall, trying to seal coat every other year, all of our buildings and playgrounds, skipping one of those each time, so about every other year. And we have made the decision after consulting with some seal coating companies that to help reduce costs, we are going to be pushing that schedule out at all of our buildings 3 to 4 years. We are going to move forward with a proposal to seal coat the high school this coming year, so that because of that being a newer building, we want to make sure in the traffic that building gets compared to the others. That is the only one we're recommending we go out to bid for seal coating for this coming summer. And then that is at an estimated cost of just under $60,000. And the other is for repairs that are happening throughout the district at various buildings. And those repairs, we start out with quite a long list. When I first came into the position, I think the total concrete and asphalt repairs were upwards of almost $2 million. And that doesn't include some significant, if we wanted to completely like tear out Founders parking lot and start over. Those were just smaller repairs throughout the district. And we take a hard look at it between the supervisors and myself and say, what ones have to be done now? Because they are truly crumbling to the point that they are safety hazards, or there are issues when it comes to plowing and maintaining those parking lots and sidewalks. This year, again, I'm coming back with several buildings that we feel have areas that do need immediate attention when it comes to concrete and asphalt repairs. And those repairs are estimated at about $84,000. We're looking to go out to bid on both of those together. With contingency architectural costs, the total project cost would come in, it's budgeted for about $187,000.
All right, Tammy, thank you. I think what I'd like to do here, because I know a number of us have discussed this, and I think you're aware of that. Maybe sometime in the coming few weeks, you could let us know when you're going to be at some of those buildings. If folks are free, they could stop by. But at the very least, if you wouldn't mind sending out some pictures to let us know maybe where we could go look at it.
I hope to have those pictures by the end of the week. I just spoke with Mary this morning. Unfortunately, I've been out of the district for a week now, so I'm just catching up. But I will have those pictures of by the end of the week of the areas we're looking to repair. I'll email them out to the board. And should anyone like to go and visit any of these buildings, I'll be available at any point just to swing by and take a look at it after you to review the projects we're looking at.
Well, I think what led to that, and I want to be clear on this, is no one's questioning your thought process on what makes these repairs necessary or the credibility of that. In fact, again, we applaud you for bringing credibility to this position. However, we're getting closer and closer to not having much of a deficit projected over the next couple of years. And a lot of the conversation of late has been, how can we eliminate it altogether? So these are the sorts of things that will be more closely scrutinized for sure. And especially after a concerted effort to really bolster things that have been neglected for so long over the last few years, at some point, then you have to say, all right, this is good enough. It's not what we'd like, but for now, it's good enough. So that's where all that came from, and we'll look forward to receiving that information.
If you could also include in the packet when we look at for action, just a historical perspective for what we have done the last 5 years. And
I'd be happy to do that,
what
because I
school,
will,
just kind of a grid and financial amount, because we deal with this every year and my memory's just not that good. I just like to be
No,
able to
and-
see it heavily.
and as I have gone back and looked recently in anticipation of the presentation tonight, I did find that for the first several years, when the Portland and the high school were in construction, we really didn't do a lot when it came to asphalt and concrete repairs. Those really did not start until 11, 12. And since then, we've had some pretty high tickets put on those, but it's because of the damage that had been done that hadn't been dealt with. Some of the seal coating had been piecemealed out and not gone out to a large bid, but smaller projects taken out to smaller contractors. But we seem to get the best price if we do go out to bid and put it out on the table and try to put these into a packaged product. So early part of my time here, this is my 6th year. We didn't do a lot, but I'll put that into a spreadsheet so you can see what we've done at various buildings. Keep them in mind. Some buildings have more traffic than others,
Sure,
which causes
sure.
that damage.
Sure.
So some buildings, you might not see much besides seal coating going on.
Just a
in those
point of
buildings.
reference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, and it is visible. All you had to do was remember what it's like to drive into the Rosette Circle or some of these other places. A few years ago, you knock your front end out of alignment, just dropping the kids off. So it is visible. But that's where it came from, and we appreciate that. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Now, the really fun part, approval of
I have nothing more to say.
the approval of the 2014 tax levies. It's been recommended that the Board of Education adopt the 2014 tax levy as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Sure you don't want one more slide thrown up there, Andrea? This is your time.
I'm good.
Okay. Vicki?
Mary Beth,
Yes.
Tom Mattia,
An enthusiastic yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Tracy Williams,
Yes.
Ron Barnes,
Yes.
Nina Montana,
Yes.
Vicky Harden.
Yes.
Okay. New business administration, the background check process for non-employees is Mr. Borman, an information item.
Glad to be able to present to you tonight kind of a change that's in the process where we'll have it in place by the second semester. Some of it has already been in place. The safety committee was reviewing and has implemented, as some of you have already encountered, the Raptor system into our buildings. So basically, when an adult is in our building, you should either see a DeKalb ID or a yellow one. They went out and looked at what schools did not use what colors and who didn't use yellow, and I'm sure they weren't serious and they said that's a sycamore color, that where we know they're not us. But anyway, but so they did put that in place so that now every adult in a building should have an ID on so that we can see. The Raptor system does a very quick background check, scans a driver's license, it has a barcode on the back, does a quick check of that person, shows that they are not a sexual offender, they're not on the sex offender list, they're not on the child, a couple different lists that it does about improprieties with children, and shows that they've at least had some level of screening. So anyone entering is that way. So basically, if someone should try to come into one of our buildings that has that should not be there because of their background, that's not to say that a parent who has a right to be there, despite the fact of them being on the sexual offender rule list, they do have to give, if they are in that situation, they do have to give administration a heads up that they're coming, and then they are accompanied by a staff member, normally the administrator, at all times they're in the building. Otherwise, if someone else comes who does not have that right, when they scan that driver's license, it will say whether that person is on a list or not. The secretaries have been instructed that their response is, the system has not approved you, let me get you an administrator. If, in most of the buildings, there are multiple administrators, so there's never a time when there's no one there. On the elementary buildings in particular, that sometimes do have a single administrator, or both would be out. Those go to my phone and I head out to that building. If someone is a sex offender and they try to enter our building, they will not only be explained why, but they'll also be visited by the police because they will have violated the rules of being on the sex offender list. So that's the one process that's in place. The one thing that we did, and board policy basically just says that the superintendent has to put in place procedures that will protect the students. And so what we have done is with that Raptor system, we made the decision was made to utilize the Raptor system for those people who are going to come like at a Christmas party in the classroom, or a Halloween party or whatever. When they're in the four walls of the building, they are have supervision at all times by a certified person. Therefore, they get just the Raptor system, have their name tag that's printed out for them, which takes a whopping less than 30 seconds to get someone through. Then they can go to that room because they're supervised and they have been screened. If a volunteer is going to be involved with our students where they are not going to have constant supervision, in that situation, there's another process that we are putting into place that is called secure volunteer, that is conducted by the Background Investigation Bureau. They do a background check. It's all electronic. That employee, that volunteer can go in there and be able to put their information in, pay the fee, and they can then have a full screening that is better than our people who are coming and getting fingerprints. In the process of investigating this and researching it, one of the things that was most compelling that kind of was rather unsettling is the fingerprint background check that we depend on so much, and the code says we have to do it on employees, is actually wholly inadequate. Even the Department of Justice website says that we ought not use that as a sole source because it's not complete. I found out that in order for that information to be in the federal database, they depend on the local courthouses. 40% of the local courthouses do not report to the federal government. An example is Maricopa County in Arizona, 4 million residents. They report nothing to the feds. So if someone was a sex offender in Arizona, in that county, and they came up here, we would never know. By using this other system that we have, what happens is they actually do it by name base, they do it by location, they get information from you. If you've ever tried to do a background check on yourself or whatever, it'll show everywhere that you've ever lived. Their system will actually go in, and they have agreements in all of the courthouses in the country. And so if you've lived in DeKalb County, it's going to do all the county systems around us. So that it'll check and make sure you're not an offender anywhere, or what your criminal background history is, whether you have felonies that would make you not appropriate. And so we have that going in place for those people. Whereas in the past, like an overnight chaperone was usually having to come in and get a fingerprint and paying $60. They can now use this online system, which will give us a better screening, and they will pay $17, $16.95. We think by going to the Raptor system in the classroom and going to this for our other volunteers, it will allow us to perhaps utilize parents and volunteers more effectively, and perhaps even more so, for that benefit to our students. The other group that we have a lot of background checks on is our university student observers, clinicians, and teacher candidates. The observers, oftentimes we have a student who is exploring, they're an NIU student or a KISH student, and they are exploring what they want to do with their life. And in the past, what has been done is we would have them they would pay a $60 fee, have their fingerprints taken, and then we allow them in our building. Now we are having them do the Background Investigation Bureau background check, which will let us know that they are okay and brings the cost down to them substantially. Because sometimes with a student, that bars them actually getting that exploration. They might want to be in education if they spend some time there. We use the same thing for clinicians, people who come in and do their clinical hours. We'll use that same process for them. When it comes to student teachers or student teacher candidates, the school code says we have to treat them like employees, so therefore we have to do the fingerprint background check. So this is a process that we feel like we are providing better coverage, better background checks to be able to know that our students are protected. And we feel very confident that this will make that meet that goal of student safety and perhaps make it a little more efficient and better. And we bring it just to you as an information item. There is no action.
All right, thanks. Any questions? Well, a couple things. First, I'd like to thank Vicki and or Jim for getting us our badges. After 3.5 years on the board, I no longer need a visitor's pass. And it's like Christmas came early.
We love taking care of you. Take care of you.
Secondly, I was here the day they happened to be testing for the first time this new system. And it is painless and quick. I think I was actually the first one they checked, and within a few minutes, you were free to go in. But it was fascinating how quickly they could do all of this. And by the way, I'm happy to report it was accurate. There was a couple of weekends in flight school I was a little nervous about, but it all came back fine. But it was really interesting and fascinating to see it work, and I'm glad that we have it, because whoever complains about the inconvenience clearly hasn't gone through it. So it's very cool.
Tracy, I'll just add, I've been in a few districts over the past couple of years, and I've been in multiple districts where they use the system. I'm glad we're catching up.
All right, next, this one is actually fun because I know the work Andrea and Doug and several put into this. We asked Gino to be here tonight to help us recap this before we vote. So give me 1 second. Gino, it's been recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution to participate in an enterprise zone tax abatement program to promote commercial development within DeKalb County. Do I have a motion? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Gino, please.
Sure. And just following up from our last meeting, we've all been provided with a resolution. It's been restructured and organized, got rid of a lot of duplicative paragraphs that were in there when it was first given to us by Paul Borg's group. I don't know if you have any particular questions or you just want me to touch on the highlights again.
Yeah, just a recap of where we ended up would be fun.
Just real highlight recap is this was given to Paul. Paul's looked at it. They've approved it, but in essence, the main 6 or 7 terms consistent with last time are this is a resolution. It's not an IGA, so we incorporated many of those terms into this resolution. It gives authority to grant abatements for 5-year periods. So 5 years to grant abatements beginning January 1st, 2016 through the end of December 2020. When the abatements are granted, they're going to be either for 10-year or 5-year abatements, depending on where the abatements are located. Remember, if you're located within 3.5 miles of the interstate, there's a 10-year schedule there if you meet certain requirements. The authority granted by this resolution is conditioned upon them being certified for an enterprise zone by January 1st, 2016. The reason we put that in there is because if they didn't get approved by that date, that application could have stood for the next year. We felt we should be asked for they extend that same resolution for the next period in the event they don't make the first cut. There's a 30-day advance notice that the enterprise zone administrator should provide you with notice if somebody's asked for an MOU and they are likely going to enter into an MOU. During that 30-day period, I recommend one of my recommendations is that you look at that and determine if you have any questions about it ahead of time. You will not be able to necessarily object about the MOU they enter into, but I think it's your opportunity to ask, confirm that the form they're going to use contain much of the terms that we've entered in the resolution. You're not going to want them to overlook some of these terms that we have in here. One of the new provisions from the last time we spoke to now was that we added the option at the district to begin the abatement after, during the second full year of operation as opposed to the first. We did that because there was some question by some other school districts whether it was maybe more beneficial to do that because of people. I was down with the flu last week. I looked at it quickly and I didn't see any benefit to that. But I called the county assessor and they didn't really understand how PTEL with the enterprise zone would impact the extension levy. And therefore I thought it's probably safest to add that right in there. So we added a provision in the resolution that allows you to elect that the abatements don't start until after you collect the first full year taxes. And that's an option for you. And I figured if the enterprise zone is approved, we'll work with the county assessor for the enterprise zones actually go into effect to determine whether that's an option you're gonna wanna take. Even if there may not be any benefit to that, you may decide that it's a year where you could use those extra dollars in your district, and you may wanna take those dollars in and start the abatement and starting in year 2 as opposed to year 1. So it's a nice option to have, so I thought, why not add it? And Paul Bork was perfectly fine with that. Also, from a job performance standpoint, there are qualifications and criteria in there about number of jobs, average wages, things of that. Ultimately, the discretion lies with the enterprise zone administrator, whether they want to waive some of those. Some employers kind of missing his mark a little bit. They've got that discretion. That was another reason that we thought leaving it to really a 5-year obligation for us to allow them to grant those agreements was beneficial, because if we thought they were abusing that discretion anywhere, we wouldn't necessarily have to grant another extension with more years to the enterprise zone. There, we did maintain the provision that said that the company receiving the abatement could not object to their property taxes. That's still in there. If they do, that terminates their abatement. Therefore, that would be a term that we're going to want to make sure that the enterprise zone administrator includes in their MOU, and they enter into an agreement. Again, our resolution requires these terms to be put in their final MOU. And lastly, if a company's sold, there is a right to assignment, and that'll be up to the zone administrator with the advice and consent of the other taxing districts. So those in general are the key provisions. I think the schedules are identified in there, pretty self-explanatory. If they're 10 years, I think, for knowledge base within the interstate commerce area, 9 years for the other ones. Those are the primary provisions. Any questions?
No questions, but you just have to go back to the presentation that Andrew made to us before about the tax levies. I mean, if you look at the amount of taxes that we get from residents is at 52%. The amount we get from industry is 11.6%. That should be closer to 20%. And the fact that we're going to take action on this, hopefully, is not about the next year or two. It's about the future of this community. It's about developing the tax base and taking some of the pressure off the residences. And I think we all know our taxes are too high. Whether you're a board member or sitting down in the audience, I think we all have that in common. So I commend you guys for crafting this in a way that kind of gives us some protection. It incentivizes these companies to do something within the next 5 years, the developers as well, to get this done. So, I'm pleased that we're a governing body that's hopefully going to take positive action on this.
Well, and I think to summarize too, what we're most happy with, that we're involved in these discussions, and I'm sure Cindy read this all the way start to finish, so it was such riveting reading to read the resolution. But our concerns were always, are we obligating future boards to really burdensome obligations? How can we possibly forecast what 6, 7, 8 years looks like? And if you sign long-term agreements today, clearly that's precisely what you're doing. So our goal was to positively cooperate, do so in a very aggressive way. These terms are as aggressive as any municipalities out there. We looked at other Indianapolis, Minneapolis, places like that, the areas that we seem to be competing with, Rockford, and got very competitive with those municipalities. So I think we did everything appropriately as far as determining what these incentives need to look like, but then also did it in a way where we basically have a veto position if and when we need it. And if new administration or others suddenly change GSA formulations and that sort of thing, future boards will need that ability to exit these types of agreements potentially. And we didn't back them into a corner where they can't do it. So I'm very, very comfortable with where we ended up with this. And thank you, Gino and Andrea, because some of these conversations were not easy, I can assure you. Several of them, actually. So having said that, if there's no further questions, thanks, Gino. Vicky, roll call.
Alan Gia,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Tracy Williams,
Yes.
Sean Barnes,
Yes.
Nina Fontana,
Yes.
Vicky Hernandez,
Yes.
Mary Hess.
Yes.
Okay, that's about 9 months worth of work right there? Something like that. Well, thanks for taking one for the team there, Gino. I know you're just recovering. Next, the approval of math curriculum materials. That the Board of Education approve the purchase of My Math instructional materials for grades K through 5 for the next 5 years at a total cost of $321,191.73. As part of our approved extended payment terms, we would pay $160,595.87, 50% of the total upon the receipt of the order, and the remainder of the $160,595.86 no later than 8/30/2015.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Tracy Williams,
Yes.
Sean Barnes,
Yes.
Nina Fontana,
Yes.
Vicky Hernandez,
Yes.
Mary Hess,
Yes.
Tom Tia.
Yes.
Next, the approval of the COPS grant. It's been recommended that the Board of Education approve participation in the COPS grant with the city of DeKalb. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? I do not have a second. So we will strike that. Next, it's been recommended, this is the one where, revisions to board policies. Well, here's the thing. Of all of these we've seen, this is the one that really kind of seemed to have impact on us as board members. And it's about whether FOIA requests now pertain to your personal tablets or computers if you're using them in the evening in a hotel room or whatever. It's actually relevant. So it's been recommended that the Board of Education hold a second reading and approve recommended revisions to the Board of Education policies as attached.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Vicky?
Nina Fontana,
Yes.
Vicky Hernandez,
Yes.
Mary Hess,
Yes.
Tom Tia.
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Tracy Williams,
Yes.
Sean Barnes.
Yes.
Very good. I actually thought someday they'd FOIA my personal computer and everybody'd laugh at all the bad trades I'd made over the last few years. I'd be embarrassed. We're done with the agenda. Two things. First and foremost, a very Merry Christmas to all of you, all of our staff and administrators. I hope you have a very safe and enjoyable holiday, and to all board members. Again, I want to commend everyone for the ACT results that we saw tonight. I just can't get over what a big thing that is. So well done. Lastly, we have all kinds of stuff going on over the holidays. Everybody knows that. Some of you we won't see for a while, some we will. I encourage all of you to take time, whether you have children involved or not, come to the high school, watch a sporting event, watch a concert. There's so many good things going on right now. I can't even tell you. The gym at the high school is exciting almost every night, isn't it, Cindy? And that new auditorium I know Madrigal Dinners is this weekend at All Guilt. I know that's a fabulous evening. So all of you, even if it's something you may not think you would have normally gone, try it. That's what takes us back to the orchestra concerts, to be honest. They're fabulous. So enjoy yourselves. Have a great holiday. We will see you in January. I need a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.